Welcome back to the IndeVets Happy Hour podcast. I'm here in my living room as normal, Dr. Marisa Brunetti, with...
I'm here too.
with the true host of this podcast, Dr. Andrew Heller.
Hello, everybody. I miss you all very much.
Andrew, why don't we just talk about real quick why we're so excited starting tomorrow?
Oh my God, we're so excited. We are going to Orlando, baby, Florida.
Woo!
Usually this conference, the VMX, is in January, and so we're really looking forward to it in the middle of winter. Now it's kind of warm everywhere, so Orlando will be just as hot as it is here.
Really looking forward to sweating for 4 days.
But it's going to be a lot of fun. We're obviously going to see a lot of people, meet a lot of people. We're doing an event at Top Golf, which should be a lot of fun. I know this is going to air after that, so we'll let you know how it went in a future podcast.
We hope we met some of you at VMX.
Yes,
but anyway,
we really enjoyed meeting you.
Andrew, what are we doing here today? What are we talking about?
All right, so we are in the middle of our Hot Pet Summer series.
It's a hot pet summer, so you know she got it lit.
We are talking about things that are related to summer for pets. And the last couple, we did heat stroke, which was great. You guys should definitely check that out. We also did July 4th and noise phobias, how to treat those, what to look for, things like that, which was also another great one. So definitely listen to the last two. And this one, we're going to be talking about some toxic plants. You know, summer is upon us. Everything's in bloom, flowers, whatnot, all of that stuff. And this is the season. 'Tis the season where our animals are outside more and eating things and when we're not looking. And there's certainly some things that we want to point out.
Yeah.
This episode is not just for veterinarians. It's also for pet owners, just to talk about some of the things that you can do immediately to know whether or not what your pet ate is good or bad. So let's begin. Let's talk about that. So we got a list, right? Where did we get this list?
So yes, we use Aspca a lot. They have an amazing toxic plants website. Any plant you ever wanted to know about is probably on that website. So we encourage everyone to bookmark that. And really briefly, every time I hear toxic plants, I think about veterinary school. Did you have a toxic plants class?
Yeah, we had a great section of our toxicology class that was all about plants, and we had a toxic plant garden.
Yeah,
I went to Ross, so it was very tropical. We had a lot of the tropical plants down there, and it was cool. Like we would go out, and we actually part of our exam was recognizing what plants were what. We had a great professor, Dr. Chakri. Shout out to him.
Shout out Dr. Chakri.
I think he's still there, actually. And everybody,
we hope you're
to
listening.
Yes, we hope you're listening. Hopefully, I won't embarrass you with my knowledge here. But
Andrew knows so much about toxic plants.
To be honest with you, I actually looked at my notes from Dr. Chakri before this.
You still have them?
I still have my notes. Yeah, he actually wrote a great book
I'm flabbergasted.
on toxicology. So I used some of that for today's discussion. So let's get into it.
Yeah. No, you keep cutting me off. What I want to say.
You know me. I'm so patient.
I wanted to name this one Toxic Plants, not just for veterinary school, because we all go through that class where we have to look at plants and be able to identify them. And what I want to say is that you're going to have to waste your time. If you're in vet school right now, you're going to have to waste your time doing that, and then you will promptly forget it.
And then there's an app for that.
Which we will talk about later. So anyway, the ASPCA has a great resource about toxic plants, but we wanted to highlight something that the ASPCA highlighted, which is the top 10 toxic plants that are probably the most common and ones you're going to see in your house, around your house, in parks, and at the grocery store. So
I thought it would be good to start with the worst ones, just in case people don't make it all the way through. Hopefully you will.
Wow, that's so optimistic.
I mean, if people out there are as patient as me,
that's true.
Then they're probably already gone.
Andrew Heller needs a 5-minute podcast.
Yes. So let's talk about the one that I think everybody knows about, everybody will never forget, which are lilies. Mm-hmm. Lilies for cats. Mm. Bad news.
Bad.
I put a 4-star next to that one because...
4 out of what?
4 out of 4.
Oh. Andrew made up his own ranking system for toxic plants.
I did. 4 out of 4. And we all know lilies and cats, it could be any part of the lily, from the pollen to the stems, to the flowers, to the roots, to the bulbs, whatever it is, any part of the plant is renal toxic to cats. And it's really bad news. And it's always something that we ask when a cat comes into the hospital in kidney failure. We always say, "Do you have Lilies?"
Yeah.
Most of the time people are like, "What? No. Why? Why do you ask that?" But obviously this is a big thing for cats.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. And when you're buying people flowers, whoever you're buying flowers for, it's going to show a lot of forethought if you think, do they have cats?
Yes.
And then you don't
buy them lilies
in the flower arrangement, which lilies come in lots of flower arrangements.
Yes.
So,
well, what always makes me a little confused is that there are lilies and then there are other lilies that are not part of the lily family. So it gets a little complicated, but just stay away from all lilies if you just want to be safe. So there are lilies like autumn crocus, glory lily. These are really, really pretty flowers, but not only are they renal toxic, some of these are actually cardiotoxic. A lot of the things we'll talk about today affect the GI.
Right.
And that's usually the signs you're going to see first are GI signs from any of these things, but some of them are more dangerous, and lilies are one of them. All right, so let's go to the next one.
So the tough part about lilies.
I guess we won't go to the next one.
The tough part about lilies, like you said, is usually you'll see GI signs first. You may not see any signs. So that's why it's really important don't bring these into your house if you have a cat.
Yeah.
And like you said, you mentioned some other lilies, but peace lilies are also toxic. But as you've noted,
not in the lily family,
lilies,
right? Not a true lily.
We all know what peace lilies look like, but they contain calcium oxalate crystals, but they're not absorbed systemically. So usually these cause only GI signs.
Good.
So anyway.
All right, so I gave the next one 3 stars on my rating here. Sago Palms. These are indoor plants too, so they're not just outdoor for the summertime. These are pretty much year-round plants, and the seeds and the nuts are the worst part, but certainly the leaves can also be toxic. And we won't get into all the toxic principles of all these things because you can look that stuff up. But just remember, sago palms, be careful. They cause a lot of GI irritation and liver damage. And they're also teratogenic, carcinogenic, and mutagenic. So for those of you who aren't veterinarians, teratogenic meaning causing like deformations in fetuses. Carcinogenic, obviously causing cancer, and mutagenic. Mutations. Thank you.
All right, well, 3 out of 4. That's
3 out of 4.
And we all know that indoor plants have become like a super fad since COVID, right? Everyone are tending to their plants if they didn't get a new puppy.
Right.
So be careful of sago palms.
And a lot of them happen to be in the palm family.
Yes.
A lot of these indoor ones, and I remember them always being, they cause the calcium oxalate crystals, so kidney toxic, renal toxic.
Yep. All right, well, the third plant I had never heard of on this list. It's called Lantana.
And we will post this list in the show notes just so you guys can look through them. So if you hear these names, if your clients come to you and say, hey, I identified a plant, it's called Lantana, you'll remember this is also a pretty toxic one. It's a 2 out of 4, but we're getting lower. Usually it's GI upset, but if eaten over and over again, it can cause liver disease. So it's more of an issue really with like grazing animals that are outdoors eating these things when you can't really see to it.
Yeah.
But certainly if it's a house plant, you gotta be cautious with it.
Yeah. And the next 3 actually I think are something that pretty much everyone has, either outside or inside as part of a bouquet. So I think we're moving down on your scale. So the next 3 have a 1 out of 4 star for their toxicity profile.
Actually, the rest, I believe, are all 1 star.
All right. Well,
I don't know why I just decided to give them all 1 star. They just didn't sound so bad when I was reading about them.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So tell us about these 3 common types of plants.
Well, so we've got azaleas, rhododendrons, which are in the same group. They mainly affect dogs and cats and horses. For those of you out there who have horses, typically you're going to see irritation to the GI mucosa, so a lot of GI signs with these. They can be in larger amounts neurotoxic and cardiotoxic. They say usually if it's to that point, you're going to get death from aspiration pneumonia from these. Tulips, another thing that are very common, especially in our yards in the springtime. The bulbs are thick. They can cause GI obstruction, but typically tulips will just cause GI irritation.
Interesting.
Hydrangeas.
My favorite plant of all time.
Yes, this is my wife's favorite plant.
Jesse, we have the same favorite plant.
We had these at our wedding on the table. So,
so pretty.
they are beautiful. And these contain cyanide believe it or not.
Is it weird that both Jesse and I love a plant that contains cyanide?
Oh man, I gotta watch out.
Yeah, you gotta watch
I'm
out.
surrounding myself with these women. But again, mostly GI signs.
You'd probably have to eat a lot of hydrangeas to get cyanide poisoning.
Yes, if your animals are outside in your yard and you know you have a lot of these plants, just just watch over them.
Yeah.
Peace lilies, you already talked about. Devil's ivy. This is one of those that's similar to peace lilies, and again, GI signs. Daffodils. Kelly, our AMD, was actually telling us about the bulbs of daffodils being really toxic.
Yeah.
And that can cause hypotension.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And again, GI upset. So all of these things, I'd say you're safe if you go with GI upset, but some of them have some other issues. There's something called hostas.
They're right outside.
Oh, I don't even know what those are. I have
Those
to
are
look those
those
up.
green and white flowers right along my driveway.
All right. Well, don't let Lois eat those. All right. Well, that's actually the top 10 list. There were other things that I wanted to brush up on, and I remember there being some really, really toxic plants that I learned about that are cardiotoxic. These are things like oleander, foxglove, Japanese yew, milkweed, and there's even something that's called vetch. I had to look this one up. It's actually used a lot on farms to replenish the nitrogen in the soil because it's a legume. So I don't think most dogs are going to be getting into that, but again, if you have horses, things like that, it can be cardiotoxic.
Yeah.
Poison ivy was an interesting one, and I actually noticed that I had some poison ivy in my yard. So I was like, I wonder, what I have to do here. So obviously I cleared it out, but I looked it up, and dogs rarely ever get poison ivy because their fur is pretty protective. But a lot of people complain that their dogs give them poison ivy because they go running through bushes and they come back and the oils are on their fur, and for obvious reasons, we get it. There are some cases of dogs having thin fur, especially along their ventral area where they can pick it up.
Yeah, Lois would probably get poison ivy on her belly. Poison ivy and devil's ivy are both named after your daughter.
Yes.
You named your daughter Ivy
after very poisonous
toxic
things.
plants.
Well, she's so sweet,
She is.
We'll make sure she's not poisonous.
Yes.
All right. Well, so poison ivy, cardiotoxic plants, some other plants that we certainly learned about. I don't even think we learned about this in toxicology necessarily, but like the foreign body migration of grass awns. Yeah. And even when we were in the city, like we would take our dogs to this one little patch of grass. It was more like a dirt patch, and they would come out with these little barbs on their feet. Poor dogs were they were limping and certainly in pain from these things. So,
but mostly the grass awns was always on our differential list when we were in vet school.
Yeah.
But it's not typically found so much in the Northeast.
Yeah.
From what I remember.
California.
And I saw them in Texas a lot. So the South, the Southeast, and the West.
I think dry climates.
Sorry, Southwest.
Yeah, like more arid climates have those things.
Yeah, so always be aware if there's anything weird that's always on your differential.
And I grew up in California. I remember getting them in my socks as a kid, like running through, and like you'd get these things and they'd be poking you in the ankles. So I can only imagine a paw, getting these things, poking into their skin and then making their way through. Terrible.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about grass then. This is interesting. People always come into the clinic saying, my dog's eating grass. What does that mean, Doc?
Oh, man, we could have a whole podcast just on what does it mean when my dog eats grass.
So number one, is it toxic?
The short answer to that is no, right? So there's no specific toxic principle of a grass. I mean, I'm sure there's different types of grass, but your common grasses are not outright toxic to dogs. And I guess we can talk about cats, because when I used to let my cats out, they would love to chomp on grass. And I kind of have a little bit of a soapbox about this because people always ask me, and it is an age-old question, and it basically is, if we knew the answer, we'd be rich, right? We don't really know. And so there are lots of theories that have been proposed as to why dogs eat grass. If you just check out a search on Vin, you're going to find a lot of things. And people think, oh, they're bored. Oh, they have a dietary deficiency. Oh, they're doing it so they can puke. But a lot of times it ends up being behavioral in nature, or they like it.
My dog eats grass.
My dog eats grass.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you and I were talking, like, as the springtime comes around and all these new grasses are out, they start to eat it more and more because it does taste good. Yeah. And so wild felids and wild canids have absolutely, eaten grass, and they find grass in their GI tracts. So I once again went searching for any research on why do dogs eat grass. And the tough part is, since 2007. There really hasn't been much work done on this, but the study that we all quote, and this is why I tell people, was done by a behaviorist during her residency at UC Davis. It's published in the Applied Animal Behavior Science Journal. And a few authors on this paper, they basically did an internet survey of owners of grass-eating dogs. And they found no link to diet or history of GI disease. So using that, I talk about that study when I'm talking to clients, but I also just described like some dogs eat grass because they already have GI upset, but most seem to eat it because they like it. So
it's interesting they like grass, but then like you try to give them vegetables and they don't want to eat that. They're like, nah, I want the chicken that's on your plate, not the vegetables.
Totally.
But they'll eat grass.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And who knows, like, also what's on that grass? Like, did something else pee on that grass? And they're like interested in that taste? I don't know. They also did a little bit of research about cats eating grass. It is less common than dogs, and most cats don't appear ill before eating the plants, and they don't regularly vomit afterwards. So they thought it was interesting to note cats eat more non-grass plants than dogs, hence why you should not have lilies in your house.
Well, it's weird that they eat anything other than meat anyway, since they're strict carnivores versus dogs that are omnivores. You expect the dogs to eat more of that stuff.
Well, maybe cats are just so bored with eating meat. They want to mix it up.
Yeah, give me something different, Mom.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm glad we added that part. So, grass not being toxic, but also, it is a thing you may see your dog doing more and more during the spring and summer times. But I think the coolest thing that I'd love for you to talk about is, look, I don't remember what all these plants look like. So how can pet owners and even veterinarians find out, what their pet may have eaten?
Yeah, we talked about this briefly at the beginning. There is an app.
Of course.
There's an app for that. And I found it really, really useful. I discovered this app called Picture This. And you can take a picture of any plant up close and it will recognize what it is just from the picture. It's amazing. And I've tried it on several plants that I already know, just as a control. And they get it right every time, which is really cool. So there's definitely this app that I think vets should have. Because if somebody sends a picture to you, you can look all smart and take a picture of it with your app and know exactly what it is if you didn't know what it was before. You can also just tell your clients, like, hey, get this app, take a picture, and then tell me what it is. And I'll tell you, based on how much the dog has, what to look for. Yeah. If we know exactly what it is, it's really easy to know how to treat these things.
I mean, I think that's a really great point and a great transition into saying, we talk a lot about poisonous things. And all people should have these two numbers on their refrigerator or in their phone. They make magnets, but the ASPCA Animal Poison Control and the Pet Poison Helpline are 24/7.
Yes.
So ASPCA Animal Control is 888-426-4435.
We'll post it.
But I'm going to say it.
Okay, say it out loud.
And the Pet Poison Helpline is 855-764-7661. And if you haven't used them, these poison helplines are staffed by specialists, toxicologists in veterinary medicine.
And not just for plants, for all things that might be toxic.
Correct. And so this is for all the pet owners out there. Even if you get to your dog right after it eats something, and even if you get your dog to a vet right away, as veterinarians, we are going to request and recommend that you still call poison control. Yes. And the reason for that is they have the most up-to-date information on the lethal doses of toxic things. And they will open a case for you. They will give you a case number, and you can give that case number to your veterinarian when your dog gets there. And
yeah, so it usually costs a little money, like $60 or something like that.
I think it's like $60. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's well worth it because they give you peace of mind. They tell you, how serious it was. Like I know so many of my friends call me and they tell me, hey, my dog had this, my dog had that. And I always say to them, look, I don't know all the ingredients in whatever you just told me. Right. Call poison control. They do, and what's amazing is they actually have like databases of real ingredients that are not available to the public. They have some special relationship with all these, what are they, manufacturers?
Sure.
And even down to like supplements and things like that. And they can tell you whether or not it's serious or not so serious. Sometimes it's just, hey, give your dog some hydrogen peroxide to puke at home and you'll be good. Other times it's like get them into the hospital. They need IV fluids. They need, real diagnostic monitoring, things like that.
We are going to have a lot of show notes for this episode. One is the ASPCA Toxic Plants website, so you guys can bookmark that. Another is picture this app and the information for calling Animal Poison Control and the Pet Poison Helpline as well.
And if anybody has any questions about anything we said, feel free to email us, contact us through our website at IndeVets.com, clinical@IndeVets.com.
Also, you can listen directly to our podcast and share it from our new
our website.
So it's IndeVets.com/podcast.
That's hard to remember.
What?
Just kidding.
You look so serious when you say
No, but if you also want to continue listening to it on Apple or Spotify or any of the other podcast platforms, please do so. Make sure to leave us a review and
subscribe.
That'd be awesome. And stay tuned for the rest of our Hot Pet Summer series. We've got some great episodes coming up.
Yeah. Next time we'll have beer.
Cheers.
Cheers.